Thank you for tuning in and checking out another episode of Unlucky, a memoir. My name is Kat. Everyone has a story. This one just happens to be mine. Welcome back. It's a new year, new goals, new challenges, and put as much effort into it as I did last year, if not more. It was an eventful year last year, and I am proud of the accomplishments I've made. Grateful that I've been able to continue regularly posting weekly, and that those of you who continue to watch every week, I am grateful. So, as of recording this, we are expecting snow, I think tomorrow. And it's about time. We've had a couple of really small snowstorms, a little bit of snow this year. But it feels like it's 60 degrees out here right now. But anyway, it reminded me of a story from 30 plus years ago. And it was, I believe it was 1996. So it was about 30 years ago. It must have been around this time of year because it was a horrible, horrible snowstorm. But that's not the real topic of the story. As with a lot of things, I didn't plan much back then. And I get a phone call about going to a show that night to see Marilyn Manson. And of course, this was Portrait of American Family Tour. It was a small club show in Allentown. So, of course, I said, let's do it. Because, I mean, he was right, kind of taken off at that point in time. And I really dug that first album. So my friend and his girlfriend picked me up. Mind you, at the time, I'm still heavily into my addiction. I am selling narcotics at this point in time to support my addiction. Him and his girlfriend picked me up. Of course, they most likely purchased some opiates from me for that evening. If not, they had some. Regardless, we were all kind of caught up in our addictions. So we go, and it's this small, tiny club, cool, intimate setting. And we get there, and I forget the opening's band name at the time, but they were a local band, and one of the members of that band had been caught embezzling from either that band or another band, was incarcerated for a while. I ended up meeting him years later in a 12-step program, at 12-step meetings. Regardless, he apparently at that point was still caught up in his addiction and was enamored with my friend's girlfriend. So she played into that, and he ended up, while flirting with her, trying to hook up with her, giving her 2 passes to come back in after the show to hang out with the bands. So we're outside. It's starting to snow at this point. There's a decent amount of snow on the ground. And the guy who drives he looked like he wanted to get going. But his girlfriend grabbed me and the 2 passes to go back inside. Her plan, I believe, was because I was selling narcotics, that I'd have a better chance of hanging out and gaining interest with the headliner. So we go back inside, and we're hanging out. And pretty soon, I'm locked in conversation with Brian, with Marilyn Manson. We're hanging out, and I'm kind of blown away at how intelligent he was versus persona and the onstage antics and everything. Because at this point in his career, he would break bottles and cut himself, and it was I mean, he's still into the theatrics, but at this point it was kind of more of shock and awe. So I'm locked into this conversation with him. And I remember something he said, and I'm not sure if it was that night or in an interview. And I remember it was a really eloquent statement that all these people that protest him accuse him of sacrificing animals and torturing and raping children and all these outlandish things. And he said, but I don't really do that. But they're imagining it. So who's the one with the sick mind, right? And I know people can get carried away with their imaginations and create things that don't truly exist in order to gain the leverage they need for other people to see their perspective. And I know myself can create monsters out of shadows and make things that aren't really there. So just that was a side note because I just thought that was really well put. That because after talking with him, you can tell he's not that type of person, or wasn't. I don't know where he's at today or what he's doing. I know there were accusations a little while back, and did they pan out? I don't know. That's not really my concern. So we're hanging out and BSing back and forth and having a little conversation. There's a few people in the group. And I got a chance to pull him to the side by himself. And I remember asking him, I go, hey, do you want to go get high? And he's like, what do you got? And I said, dope, because that's just what we called it in that part of the country at that point in time. He goes, wait, what kind? And I still remember it was either, because back then you got these little glassine baggies that were sealed inside plastic that had stamps on them. And that's how you knew where it came from in the city in Philly. That's you went looking for certain stamps because you knew the quality was going to be there. And these were stamped Polo or Tyson. One after the clothing company, and it had their stamp on it, and the other one after Iron Mike. So it had a stamp, I think, with a boxing glove or a version of his face, and it said Tyson on it. So I don't remember which one it was, but I remember it was one of the two. And I remember saying either Polo or Tyson. He kind of looked at me confused because my world was my world, and I thought everyone existed and lived in it and understood the vernacular of that area. My worldview hadn't expanded to the point where here in Colorado, at this point, they call dope blues because it comes in a blue pill. They call methamphetamine clear because it's clear. And then back home, it would be methamphetamine be crystal or shard. Heroin is fent or dope. There's a few terms for it still used back there, but they're different worlds, and that's my point. Like I still remember moving to St. Louis and hearing them call their good marijuana, their good cannabis, swag, and back east, swag meant garbage. So like I said, at that point in time in my life, my worldview was rather small. But when I explained to him that it was opiate, it was heroin, he said, no, I don't do that, man. So that dispels that myth that he was a heroin addict. If that, I believe that was a thing going around back then, but he was offered it and he turned it down. He said, but if you can find me cocaine, I'm down. So now I had a mission because I wanted to hang out. I wanted to have this story to tell or a version of this story to tell at some point. And this wasn't the idea of the story. This would have been a boasting, bragging story to the other people I was getting intoxicated with. You know what I did? But now it's just a little anecdote in the history of my addiction. So I'm hanging out, I get on my phone and start making calls and trying to connect with anybody I know that would have powder. And needless to say, this was the largest storm of 96. It was one of the biggest storms in Pennsylvania for a few years. It was really dumping. Her boyfriend's flipping out. We have to go. So we get in the car, and I believe at the time he had an Audi, so it was probably all-wheel drive. So it handled pretty well in the weather, but it didn't handle that well because it was nasty out. I remember continually trying to find people and her finding people. Everybody was reaching out that was with me, trying to find somebody with powder. Unfortunately, that weather coming in, it kind of closed shop for a lot of people, and nobody was willing to bring it to me, and nobody was willing to take the run to go get it. So that kind of died quickly, and that ended my evening hanging out with a rock star, not being able to supply him with what he needed. Funny enough, rumor has it on the second album, which I can't think of, Smells Like Children, I think was the second album. There's a version of the song White Trash from the first album that's tuned down, played acoustic. Rumor has it that gentleman supplied him with powder and got the connection and the hookup and ended up on the second album. So who knows what could have been. Later, I come to find out they got snowed in Allentown. And ironically enough, in the same hotel, two other big factions were snowed in. One not as big as the other. I mean, it depends on who you are, I guess. But Sesame Street on Ice was in town at the time, and I've heard rumors about them. They were in the same hotel along with the 1996 Orlando Magic. So to hear those walls talk, to find out what may have went down that night in that hotel, I could just imagine, because that's back, I believe, Shacks with the Magic. Marilyn Manson at the time, like I said, they were kind of making their mark, playing clubs till they got bigger and just blew up within a year or so. But that was just a not so dark story to compensate for all the dark stories that have been coming from me lately, trying to lighten it up a little bit. But letting you know, like I said, hanging out, having a conversation with this guy. He was very intelligent, very well spoken. Not the person you see in front of cameras and on stage. And I believe that goes a long way with a lot of people. I'm not the person that you saw standing on the side of a road with a sign asking for money. I'm not the person who portrayed a certain way in front of this, that, or the other. That's why I do my best at this point in time to be as authentic as possible and being me regardless. Not put up any fronts, not disguise myself, not try to be anybody that I'm not. And just remember that when you come across people, don't judge a book by its cover. There's a whole lot of content inside that we don't see and won't know unless we explore and have conversations. And that is one way of combating stigma, is actually asking questions, becoming educated, and not just taking the one story headline that you read, taking that for what it is. I would say you got one, use it, do some investigation, ask some questions, get to know people before you judge them. So to start off this new year, that's like the key is no judgments, man. Because I've been judged enough in my life. I don't feel it's right to judge others because I didn't like it when it was happening to me. So with that, I appreciate each and every one of you for following along and coming on this journey with me. It's been a heck of a year last year, and I've come forward leaps and bounds, and I'm still not there yet. And I hope I never, ever reach my ultimate goal. I hope there's always something to strive for, something to push forward for, something worth learning and growing for. I appreciate each and every one of you. I truly do. Thanks for coming along on this journey. I'll catch you all next week.